Hello, theme park enthusiasts and horror fans, and welcome back to Planet Coaster and my Warner Brothers theme park. So, now I think it should be fairly clear what this area is going to be. One of my favorite books of all time, actually probably my favorite book of all time, is Stephen King's It. And while the modern adaptation of the movie is not particularly my favorite because it leaves out several things, it is a Warner Brothers property. On top of that, there is a prequel that is being done by the company that is going to be called Welcome to Derry. So, in this area that we have here, that's the plan. That's what all of this is going to be. This whole area is going to be Derry, Maine, and focus on different parts of Stephen King's It. Now, in this particular episode, we're going to work on this area down here. But let me explain some of what's going on already. So, this bridge, as I noted in the last episode, I had found on a workshop. It's a great looking bridge. And I named it the Kissing Bridge because that is an actual site from the book, and I wanted to have that little feature in there. What we are going to have here is we are going to have a park in this middle area here, right in here, and then we are going to have buildings along this side, and this side, and this side that are going to hide most of what is going to be a dark ride, log ride. So then we're going to have the Barbie ride here. The whole reason I want it is because this is going to turn into a giant cityscape. And the Barbie ride is actually going to add to that by making it look like that there are moving cars on the particular cityscape. So I love having that feature. Now there are things I'm still going to need to do here. For one, I'm going to have to get people into this park area. So I do have to do that at a point in time. There's going to be a second ride over here. Well, there's actually going to be two rides over here. One is going to be a roller coaster that is going to be an indoor roller coaster. And then there is going to be a more traditional dark ride. Not the one I used in my previous park for the haunted house, but the modernized seats and such that can turn from side to side. And this is going to be telling sort of the history of Derry when it comes to Pennywise the Clown. But let's turn back now to the main ride here. Now, this ride is the inspiration for everything I'm doing with Warner Brothers here. Personally, it was one that once I had seen that somebody had made a great Pennywise statue here in game, I had to do this. I had to build a Pennywise themed area, and with that, I did some research, figured out Warner Brothers was who I needed, and it just so happens they don't have a park of their own here in the United States, so it fit perfectly for what I wanted. Now you might be asking, why a log ride? And you're going to hear a lot about Stephen King's It during these different videos covering this series, because everything I'm doing, I'm trying as best I can to base mostly on the book, not on the movies that have come out, either the Tim Curry movie or the more modern adaptations. Now, obviously, the Pennywise is from the new movie, and I will also pay homage to the Tim Curry version in a place as well. But, for the most part, everything is going to be much more based on the book. So some of the things you might not understand just if you've watched the movie. Let's start with the log ride itself. So, the log ride is important because Derry, Maine, in the fictional world that Stephen King created, is there because Derry is where the logs fetched up when they were coming down the river during the lumber trade era. So I felt, especially since that's sort of what birthed the town in a way, it was the most appropriate for the biggest ride in the park. So for this ride, basically I'm going to cover some of the main highlights of the Stephen King novel. So we're going to start out with some of the scenes such as perhaps Georgie's fateful end. We're going to probably have what happens to Stan in the bathroom here. I definitely want to have the scene with the werewolf as it is in the book, not in the movies. And then we're going to drop down into the river here because I have to sort of separate things into the different time periods that they occurred. So we're going to have this be the early childhood time. We're going to have the battle with the werewolf from childhood here. We're not going to have the first battle with it in the ride. We will have Pennywise popping up at different points, but not the actual battle with it. Then we're going to have the dropout into the river here. That's going to go past the amusement park that I plan on setting up here in the middle. This amusement park is going to have rides specifically from the time period that was appropriate for the book. So I'm going to work hard on getting flat rides and coasters that are going to work specifically with the time period that we're talking about. Then what's going to happen is, and you saw this in the newer version of the movie if you watch chapter 2, there is a murder that's going to take place on the bridge. This one right here that I've just moved the road to be. So we're going to have this have a full-on bridge to it, and somebody is going to be pushed off of the bridge by bullies. Now, that is why I cared so much about the height of this drop, because in the book, it tells you the height of the drop, and I have it within a foot of the proper height. So that way, when you see the guy come off here, that's the height he would have fallen from. We're going to have a little bit with Pennywise and stuff here as well. And then we're going to go into... So this is going to be our transition. This drop over here is our transition from childhood into the more modern adulthood portion of Stephen King's It. We're going to have this drop occur. And I'm debating. I may still move this road further up this way. There's a very good chance that I will. But once they're through the bridge... Then we're going to have another scene that's going to take place. They have to go under the kissing bridge, of course, but I may actually put another scene in before the ride goes under the kissing bridge. I don't know. That might just be a dark ride portion that's right in here, which would be Stan's suicide. So that might occur in this area here. Then we're going to have this drop, the enormous one, be into the sewers, and leading to the culmination of the book. Let me turn the lighting back to daytime here so we can see a little bit better. So we have the massive drop that comes down here. We're going to have a couple things happen down here. I may have a secondary scene down here. Now, the thing that I'm sort of torn about is the scene from the book should be Georgie, but there are no assets in the game of a little boy in a poncho. There aren't really any assets I can use that are just a child at all. So that makes it a little bit difficult to do that particular scene down here. On the other hand, when they came down into the sewers the first time, they encountered Rodan, or the spirit of Rodan. So I have toyed with the idea of making a Rodan-like scene in this area over here. I'm going to probably debate that through this week, and then I'll make a decision and probably deal with that in next week's episode. But then we're going to come to this area here, which is going to be the climax of the entire story. This is the final battle with it. And I will say there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this series. I'm going to tell you a lot about the book. So if you're not wanting to have the actual book spoiled for you, you might not want to watch this until you're done with the book. It's been out for a while though, so I don't feel too bad on saying what's going on with it. So the reason I have this Ferris wheel here is this is going to be replaced with a different version of the Ferris wheel that somebody did on the workshop that has a giant spider to it. And the spider is fantastic looking. I definitely want to add that in and have that appear here so that everyone can sort of have that vision of this giant spider versus the people. And you're going to go straight past the spider here. Then what I'm going to have over here, see if I can turn the flashlight on. No, having trouble with the flashlight for right now. There we go. All right. So then what we're going to have over here is I'm going to hollow out this section over here, and we're going to have the spider's death here, right before we start the ascension back up. Now, I have left some areas sort of undecided. For one, I need to finish everything down here so I can fill in the hole that I've created. I need to put in I think I'm going to put in basically a concrete roof and then put the ground over top of it to make it look much more natural. But what I hope for here is I need to have the pathway for this ride here somewhere. So I might have that coming in right here and then just going down and down into the area so that people can get onto the ride. If I'm able to do that, then I might extend this section some, because after it is defeated in the town of Derry suffers an enormous amount of destruction. And I would love to have a little bit of that in the ride itself here in this section. I don't really have the room for it right here, so I would love to be able to sort of take this track and go out and around some. But as I said, that's going to be much later because I need to get the land set up first. Today's project is going to be mainly down in the chasm here, setting up this final scene. So I'm going to put in the proper wheel here. We're going to have to get the people down in here properly, and then we're going to need the spider over here that is also dead. So that's going to be the focus of this episode, and we're going to sort of work backwards from that, because then I need to next week decide what I'm going to do with this area over here. And then after that, I need to then start on this above ground section. So for now, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let you enjoy as I start the work. And then at the end, I'll come back and we'll go over what I've achieved for this particular week. Alright, so this is where I'm going to go ahead and end things for this episode. I still realize I have more work to do down here. So let me walk you through the thought process so far. I felt like I did need something over in this area, especially after I put up the wall here. So I felt like having Rodan that would come down after the people drop down the drop would just work well here. I mean, you're going to come down the drop, you're going to splash, and then suddenly there's going to be this giant bird in your face. So I think that works out nicely. Still need to fill out all this concrete over here because I do want this to be concrete. I want it to have the look of attempting to be natural, but at the same time not being natural. Because the fact is that the tunnels that were sort of the home of it are not natural at all. So I think that works well there. I may consider either closing in this wall some or putting something else over here. There is another item I could put over here if I could find one in the workshop, because it would take a lot of work to do a detailed version of one. But what we're going to have then is this wall, so this area is separated from the other area. I don't mind this bleed through of the green light here because actually I'm going to put in more green light. There's going to be some green lights in the ceiling along the drop because I want people to have an idea of how fast they're dropping. So I want them to feel that speed as they're going. And then it is mentioned in it that there's light sort of emanating out of the walls. So I definitely wanted the lighting here, but I am going to do work where there's more of the lighting coming out of the walls and stuff, so it's more visible throughout. Then the plan is going to be to put in another wall here so that the lift hill is separated from this area. That way all eyes turn to face the real pièce de résistance here of the giant spider and the friends. Now, I didn't have a lot of selections to go with here, so here was my thought process. We have Richie Tozier here, who does have his glasses on. They had to be sunglasses instead of regular glasses, but I think they work, especially when you consider that the lights are going to be off and the darkness once this area is fully enclosed. So to give you sort of an idea of that, the illumination I think works for it, but as I was saying, we've got Richie here, so he's got his glasses on. Bill in the actual story is bald, so that's why I went with the hair that is the same color as the face and such, because it's as close as I can get to making him bald. Then we have Bev here, wanted to do the red hair on her. I actually did find another female character I might replace this one with, because I do like the other one a little bit better. So I may do that change. Then we have Ben here, because I wanted him to sort of be a bit on the casual side. And then we have the gunslinger here, and my whole thought was I didn't want to use one of the other males that sort of fit the scene. And with this one, Eddie does have his aspirator, which in the book is sometimes joked about as being almost gun-like. So I wanted something that was a little bit different. It was the one that was the closest to what I wanted. And as I said, I think when you turn out the lights, this pass-through here will work. I think this works out nicely. Then after you see that scene, I am going to put in a barrier in here once I put up the wall over on the other side here. So that way as you're coming through, you're going to have to go through some doors or something of that nature. Maybe just a narrow cave to get to this area over here. And then you'll see the dead spider. So some of its eyes are red, but some are not anymore. And then you'll go ahead and turn and climb up out of this area. Now, as I said, I do have plans for up here, but as you can see, this particular ride is just going to have so much involved with it. Yeah, I definitely took this from the workshop because there was no way I was going to be able to. I just don't have the skill to do this kind of a spider the way this person did. They did a phenomenal job with it, and I love the spider web as well. And it adds another ride into the area, which I don't have a problem with whatsoever. I had to modify it because I had to remove a bunch of the stuff that wasn't going to be used for the ride. And then we went ahead and put in this area so that I had sort of a stand for the people to stand on. But as I said, in the next episode, we're going to touch up these areas here, hopefully, and then we'll get into this wall and this wall in order to get the lighting right for this area, so that hopefully, my hope is that I'll be able to close off this area by the next episode and go ahead and put in solid ground here. I did get this area closed in, so I'm sort of happy about that. Right now it looks a bit rough right around here, but you've got to remember, I'm going to have this mountain continue from there to here still. So all this that sort of looks rough is probably going to be covered. So it's not going to really be an issue in the slightest. This area here is going to be covered, but it's going to be covered with buildings. So I'm not overly worried about that either. I just need this encased. And I wanted it to have sort of a partially constructed and partially natural look, and I feel like that's what we got out of it. The ropes, I wish I could have colored them all white, but I saw the problem right away was that was going to take forever, and then I sort of realized since I was going to put in the green lighting anyways, it wasn't going to be something you really noticed. I wish I could turn off the red lighting on the Ferris wheel, but again, that's just one of those compromises we have to make sometimes due to the way the game is. I'm excited because of the fact that it looks like with Planet Coaster 2, there's going to be a lot less of those compromises. You're going to be able to do a lot more things as far as customization of the rides themselves. But I had started this Warner Brothers park with the intention of doing this specific ride. The rest of the area has sort of come to mind as time has gone on, but this ride is the entire reason for me to have done the entrance place that I did for the Warner Brothers parks, and the entire reason behind this park. Everything else came after the idea for this ride. So to me, even though we are going to be looking at through the ground, but even though we are going to be looking at a new game here in the very near future, I wanted to do this the way I had originally intended, because I've put enough effort into it at this point. I wanted to see it through. So I know we're far from this ride being done. It's probably going to be several weeks until this ride alone is done, and multiple other weeks after that before this area is done. But I hope that you enjoyed what you saw in this episode. If you did, please go ahead and click that like button. I am going to be going ahead and making these videos generally about a week in advance, because I do want to make sure that what I'm putting out there is what I'm wanting. So I do have to do them slightly in advance. So if you make a comment on it, if you have some idea that you would suggest or some correction you might want to what I'm doing, go ahead and put it in the comments. I read every comment I get on every video, and I try to respond to as many of them as I can. I will definitely take it into consideration, and if I need to, I'll reopen the ground here and make that adjustment to the ride. But I do hope that you like the direction I'm going with it. I think it's going to turn out to be something really good in the end. I can't say impressive because I don't feel like my skill level is that level, but I think it's going to be really good, and I'm very excited for everybody to enjoy it as much as I hope to. With that in mind though, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, so that you're aware when I produce new videos in the future. Thank you, and I hope to see you back for more of Planet Coaster, and for the Welcome to Derry area of my Warner Brothers Studios park.